What would you do if the worst happened to you? If it happened to you today, where would you go? What would you do? What would happen in your life? As we work through Mark 5 today, we're gonna talk about the worst that could happen. And we're gonna talk about where do we go and what do we do when that happens. And when Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, he was crossing the Sea of Galilee here. A great crowd gathered around him, and he was beside the sea. As soon as he got out the boat, the people mobbed him and swarmed around him. Then came one of the rulers of the synagogue, Jairus by name, and seeing him being Jesus, he fell at his feet. And Jairus implored him earnestly, saying, "My daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live." And he went with him. And a great crowd followed him and thronged about them. And there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years and who had suffered much under many physicians and had spent all that she had and was no better, but rather growing worse. She had heard the reports about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his garment. That word touch there, the Greek means to clutch, to cling to hold on to like your life depends on it. For she said, "If I touch even his garments, I will be made well." And immediately the flow of blood dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. And Jesus, perceiving in himself that power had gone out from him, immediately turned around in the crowd and said, "Who touched my garments?" And his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing around you, and yet you say, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see who had done it. But the woman, verse 33, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." While he was still speaking, verse 35, there came from the ruler's house some who said, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the ruler of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." And he allowed no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. They came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, and Jesus saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. What that means is that the funeral procession had already begun. The funeral had already started. She had already been pronounced dead. They were already preparing for her burial. Verse 39, and when he had entered, he said to them, "Why are you making a commotion and weeping? The child is not dead, but sleeping." The people there laughed at him, but he put them all outside and took the child's father, mother, and those that were with him and went in there where the child was. And taking her by the hand, he says, "Talitha kumi," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." Scholars tell us that this phrase is kind of like when your mom and your dad would wake you up from a nap, tap you on the bottom of your foot, or kind of sweep your hair out of your face, and they would say, "Sweetheart, it's time to get up. Hey, bud, it's time to get up." I love that death to our Savior is like waking us up from a nap. Jesus says, "Talitha kumi," sweetheart, it's time to get up. And immediately, verse 42, the girl got up and began walking, for she was 12 years of age, because, and I love Mark added that in there, because what else would a 12-year-old do? They gotta move, right? And they were immediately overcome with amazement, and he strictly charged them that no one should know this and told them to give her something to eat. You can be tempted to approach this passage and say, "All right, God, what do I need to do in order for you to heal me? God, what do I need to do for you in order for you to restore my life? God, what do I need to do for you in order for my spouse to come back? God, what do I need to do for you in order to save my kid? God, what do I need to do in order for you to fill in the blank?" But this is not about what we do for God. This is about what God has done for us. So let's ask, why did Jesus do this? Was it because of their great faith? What was it because of Jairus and woman's great faith? The answer to that is no, it is not. What's beautiful here is that we need to see our Savior still responds. He does not respond to you because of your measure of faith. He responds to you because you come to him. You do not have to get right before you come to Jesus Christ. You do not have to clean yourself up before you come to him. You come to him as you are because he died for you as you are. See, the reason Jesus does this is not because of their great faith, because they had a weak, desperate faith. They had a faith that was more, you need to do this for me because of who I am, as Jairus may have said. But Jesus did this because of his compassion to their faith. His compassion to their faith. He met them where they were. Let me ask you this. Would they have come to Jesus if these two things were not true? Would she have come to Jesus if she had not suffered for 12 years? Would Jairus have come to Jesus if his little girl's life was not on the line and he hadn't tried everything else? Would you? Would you be here today if you didn't need Jesus? Would you be here today if you didn't need something from him? Maybe you were here and the worst has happened to you. And you were here today because you have tried everything else and you think, man, I'm gonna give this a shot. And there's a glimmer of faith there, and you know what God does to that? He responds to it. It doesn't matter the measure of your faith, it matters the measure of his compassion. And we serve a compassionate God. All you have to do is reach out and clutch in faith, and God will respond to you. It doesn't matter how you come to Jesus today, just that you come, just that you seek him. Our temporary reality is that our ending is going to be just like Jairus and woman. In the end, if you have put your faith and trust in Jesus Christ, God will make all sad things come untrue. God will wipe away every tear, all the pain you've experienced in this world, all the hardship you've experienced in this world, all the abuse you've experienced in this world will not compare to eternity with him. Only believe, have faith, remember his promises, cling to his robe, trust in him, and you will live. Imagine the worst. Now imagine the worst happen. Look and go to Jesus.